Alrighty, so if you have not heard yet, we are now introducing our SimpliPhi energy storage system. Really, the goal here is to make a more functional product, something that can sit on the wall outside, and something that's vertically integrated from bottom to top. So we're talking about MPPT charge controller converted in the inverter with batteries included in the same system. Let's jump into some details here. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please pop them into the little Q&A bar on the bottom or top of your screen, depending on your layout. So again, we are SimpliPhi Power, and if you're not already familiar with us, we've been making versatile, scalable, and simple power solutions for over a decade now. And what we're introducing now is something that's vertically integrated as well. So it's still scalable, it's still versatile, very safe and simple. What we're talking about is a 6 kilowatt inverter with a built-in MPPT charge controller, a 4.9 kilowatt hour battery, and an EnergyTrak control system and app. So this is really the customer interface here on the right-hand side, as well as the installer interface with programming the inverter and monitoring the system. We're going to talk a whole lot about this monitoring system today. So our 6 kW inverter, to kind of dive into the details here, it does have 2 MPPT charge controllers integrated inside the inverter. It is scalable for up to 9 inverters in parallel for increased load support. So that means you can power a total of 54 kilowatts continuous in loads. There is some surge capabilities and transfer times that we're going to dive into in detail later. There's a digital interface on the inverter, meaning you can program it from the actual face of the unit. However, you're going to really want to use our EnergyTrak system. So with the inverter, you'll want to purchase a gateway for each system, and you'll have access to program the inverter remotely through the Bluetooth of your cell phone or your tablet. This is going to be a much easier commissioning, and then you'll also be set up to monitor the system through that same app. And we'll talk about that app in more detail as well. The unit is IP65 rated. This is a big one, guys. I mean, we've been getting requests over and over again through the years to, build these access units in larger quantities. We've been getting tons and tons of sales of our outdoor rated cabinets, and now we're just making one product that is already outdoor rated. So you don't need to add any additional products or cabinets on the exterior of this unit. You can put this on your exterior wall as it is. It's ready to go. The 4.9 battery, this is actually 4.98 kilowatt hours, so it's nearly a 5 kilowatt hour battery. We are still expecting a 10,000 life cycles at 80% DOD. So cycling 10,000 times throughout the battery's lifespan means if you were to do that daily, your battery would last about 27 years. Now, realistically, we can only offer a 10-year limited warranty. So, it benefits you to cycle this as much as you can within that period. But note that it is expected to last well beyond its warranty period, and we already have batteries in the field outliving their warranties. Any depth of discharge is acceptable, so you can actually run this all the way down to 0 and then back up to 100% if you'd like. It's going to last a lot longer, as a heads up, if you were to simply use it to 80% depth of discharge, but you can make it work all the way to 100% depth of discharge if you like. It will not affect the warranty period at all. The unit is scalable, so as I mentioned, you can parallel 9 inverters. You can also parallel up to 72 batteries. That's 358 kilowatt hours. Really, there's not going to be any residential projects you're working on going over that limit. At least I hope not. This is coming with closed loop communications integrated, so you'll simply use a Cat5 cable to plug this battery into other batteries in the system, as well as one battery in the system is going to connect to the inverter itself and the gateway. So that's going to explain, really, that's going to handle all the communications. There's no external cards required. You don't have to plug in a laptop ever. This is just a very simple system. All of our products are safety tested. Really, we always have safety at the forefront of our minds. So again, our products are 9540 listed. This 9540 listing is in progress for this battery here with the inverter. And again, the battery itself is IP65 rated, so no additional components needed for outdoor use. This is ready to go as is. As far as the EnergyTrak system, we're offering a very fast commissioning setup. So when you're programming the unit initially, you can use the LCD screen on the inverter, but again, it's going to be much faster and more functional to use the app. It's also capable of fleet management for customer installations. So if you are an installer going out and doing multiple of these, you can use this app to manage your entire fleet of installs. And beyond that, you can even reconfigure the system remotely and do quite a bit of troubleshooting just through the app. I mean, you're going to get push notifications when there's a warning or a fault, and you can simply go into the app and maybe change a setting or two that are causing that fault or warning without even visiting the site. Another thing limiting the amount of time you have to spend visiting the site is our ability to do over-the-air firmware updates on both the batteries and inverter. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about each of these individual products. The battery itself is 51.2 volts nominal, 48 to 56 volts DC operating range. It's rated at 4.98 kilowatt hours. That's if you're using 100% depth of discharge. If you're only using 80% depth of discharge, you're going to be looking at about 4 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. The max continuous discharge is 48.5 amps DC, which is 2.5 kilowatts. And if you're discharging for a surge, maybe starting a well pump or a motor, you got 10 minutes at 5.1 kilowatts. Again, you can discharge all the way down to 0 and back up to 100 if you'd like. And there is a BMS included with closed loop communications with our inverter. Paralleling up to 72 batteries. We're going to talk about how to mount this guy in a second here, but there's an invisible back plate. So you're going to mount the back plate on the wall and just hang the battery on the back plate. Note that if you are installing outside, code is going to dictate that you need to hide all the wiring. And we do have a conduit box that's going to pop right on top of the battery. It's going to have knockouts for conduit as well. So if you are installing outside, you're going to want to add on that small conduit box for the exterior of the battery just to cover the wiring and allow you to easily connect conduit to hide the wiring. Now, with being outside comes some temperature difficulties. On the high end, this battery can be operated as high as 140 Fahrenheit, and that means really being stored or discharged at up to 140 Fahrenheit. And it can also be charged as high as 120 degrees. So that's really quite high. You're rarely, if ever, going to see any issues charging on the high side. The issue really comes into play on the low side. So we do see plenty of environments that our batteries get installed in reaching 32 degrees Fahrenheit a few times throughout the winter. And what I would recommend here is either you install the unit indoors or you simply convey to the customer that they should understand that in cold temperatures, their system is not going to allow charging, or it's going to allow charging very slowly. So as this unit gets closer and closer to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it will tell the inverter to ramp down charge current more and more severely as it gets colder and colder. And then when it reaches 32 or below, it's just going to disable charging completely. It's still going to operate. It's still going to provide power to the customer's loads. But again, there's no charging, so they may run out of electricity at some point. So that's something to keep in mind for outdoor installations that are in cold environments. Now, I did want to also bring up our SimpliPhi battery here. Our 3.8 kilowatt hour SimpliPhi battery is indoor rated, so this may be a better fit for those cold environments where you need the battery to be in an insulated environment anyway. You're not prepared to install it fully outdoors. This has a very, very similar BMS, all the same functionality. So you're looking at the same communications functionality, monitoring capabilities. Charge and discharge current ratings are a little different because you're looking at a smaller battery. So this is a 3.8 kilowatt hour unit. That means it's got 75 amp hours of capacity at 51.2 volts. So therefore you can charge and discharge at C/2, which is 37.5 amps per battery. And this is going to scale up as you add batteries to the system. So again, this is really a similar unit. It's a good choice for those indoor installations, especially in extremely cold environments where you have to have the battery indoor and insulated. You know, there's no sense in paying extra for an outdoor rated battery when you're going to be putting it in an indoor rated place. Back to our 4.9. This battery is going to be wall mounted with a bracket. So what you're going to do is gather whatever hardware you need to mount it into a wall, whether it's the wooden wall, concrete, brick, etc. You will mount the wall plate into the wall and then come back and just hang the battery on that wall plate, just like hanging a picture. Now I say it's like hanging a picture, but look at the weight. It's 160 pounds. So that's a big unit. It's definitely able to be installed by hand. Now I have installed this with my teammate over here, Parker, and Garrett. It was no problem with just two people. There's a handle on each side of the battery, and that allows the installer to, one each can grab the battery from each side. So two people can definitely install this unit on their own. The inverter is much lighter, so it's a similar mounting style, which we'll talk about, but it's much lighter. Now, I do want to talk about the connections we're going to be making here. So it's a 3/8 inch terminal stud. Previously, we were requiring each individual battery to be wired to a common combiner. So each battery would have their own set of cables and their own home run, and there'd be no daisy chaining allowed. However, in this configuration, with this new battery that's outdoor rated, we really want to reduce the number of additional components that you need to purchase and source and set on the wall. We want it to be a very clean looking installation with minimal extra components for you to source. So what we're doing here is we're allowing daisy chaining from battery to battery. And we'll talk about what that looks like if you're not familiar with the daisy chaining method. If you're doing that, make sure to use 4/0 cable with some really solid crimps. I would recommend just pre-ordering a cable that's a set length that you know it's going to be. 4/0 can be a little difficult to crimp. And using 2/0 from one of the batteries to the inverter. So this goes for up to 4 batteries. If you're over 4 batteries, we'll discuss different wiring methods required there. The RJ45 communication ports take Cat5 cable or greater, pretty simple there. We actually do include the Cat5 cable for battery to battery connections. And I believe that's about 4 feet, but the communication cable from the battery to the inverter, that one is not included because it's going to be a specific length that we are not going to be able to guess. So again, we'll come back to wiring in more detail on the battery. But for now, I want to talk about our inverter and the specific specifications. So it's 86 pounds. As I mentioned, it's much lighter than the battery. And this, I would say one person can definitely lift and install on their own. I mean, it definitely helps to have two, but I was able to lift the unit and mount it on my own. So that's definitely a possibility. There is a PV switch on the side and a battery startup button. Again, similar mounting style. So we got this invisible back plate you're going to mount, and then just hang the inverter onto it, hiding the back plate completely as you mount the inverter. I'm seeing no questions yet. Everybody's still awake over there? All right, moving on. Battery inputs here on the inverter. So we've got an input voltage range from 42 to 64 volts DC, a nominal battery voltage of 51.2 volts for the input, and a max charging current of 100 amps DC, with the max discharge being a little higher at 150. As far as PV inputs, there are 2 MPPTs, and each one is going to have 2 connections for the positive and 2 connections for the negative. So really, you can input up to 4 strings into this one unit here. So that's going to avoid, again, what we're trying to do here is avoid you as the installer having to source additional components and having to wait, to see these components shipped from overseas and put additional things on the wall that are going to messy the install. We've really wanted to include as many things as we could within the inverter unit itself. So again, there's 2 separate MPPTs with 4 total PV string inputs. If you have more than 4 PV string inputs, you're going to want to either get a PV combiner or look at additional inverter units. So each MPPT splits this power, so you can have 3750 watts per MPPT, max DC input 600 volts. This is the open circuit voltage. MPPT range 120 to 550, and the startup voltage is 160. So the max input current per MPPT is 15 amps, and do not exceed the max short circuit current of 21 amps. That's normally about 2 panels, maybe 3 panels in parallel, depending on the short circuit current of your panel. So be careful not to exceed that short circuit current. I see a good question here. We are going to talk about rapid shutdown. There is a lot of rapid shutdown. There's been definitely an improvement in rapid shutdown safety here on this inverter. So we're going to talk about that. As far as the AC features, it's got an AC output continuous of 6 kilowatts, surge for 5 seconds at 9 kilowatts, and surge for 100 milliseconds at 12 kilowatts. We are looking at a 122/40 split phase output, so no 3-phase yet. Working on that. We'll see when that's ready. Nominal output frequency is 60 hertz, and you can switch it to 50 hertz in the field. Transfer time is less than 8 milliseconds. So this is really impressive here, guys. We're definitely going to recommend that you check the specs on any specific equipment, but this does function as a UPS. So most devices will not even turn off. They will not see the power outage, and your clocks will definitely not reset. The gen input and grid inputs are both 40 amps AC, so that is also the max throughput bypass capability with a max efficiency of 96%. Excuse me, 96.5. Really, what I wanted to talk about on this slide here is just to note that we're integrating as many things as we can into one unit. And you'll find out we're even integrating the rapid shutdown into this unit. So it's really able to handle loads, grid, battery, generator, and solar in one unit. So we're minimizing the number of items on your wall and the number of items that you need to source. The unit is able to operate as grid tied with backup, off grid entirely, or even grid tie without a battery. So if you want to have a DC coupled PV system that is tied to the grid with no battery at first, and maybe you're considering adding a battery later down the road, that is an option here. So that's another plus. We're using CAN bus for communications, and we're storing our data in the cloud through the gateway. It's going to be stored in the US for data storage. That's a question I've been getting a lot of. Now, two more things that we're including in the unit and not making you source yourself or add externally on the wall is an auto generator start, the 2-wire start, and a rapid shutdown transmitter compatible with AP smart devices. So you're going to want to make sure to use AP smart micros, AP smart devices, and note that you really don't need an auto generator start. It's already built into the unit. So on the right-hand side here, you see the actual physical gateway. This is what's providing the system with internet access. So you're going to connect your Wi-Fi router to this and then connect this to the system. You're going to be able to program the system and see all the monitoring through the app. So it's really nice interface. It's going to show you where power is flowing to and from. You're also going to see historic data, so graphs and charts over time that we will be able to use for troubleshooting. We have 1741 finished with UL. I know we get a lot of questions about UL 9540 and UL 9540A. Those are both in process. UN 38.3 certification, that allows us to airship the product. That is not yet finished for the battery. So right now, just boats and transit, ground transit, but air shipments hopefully very soon. UL 1973 is finished for the battery. So this is a good plus, and IP65 is finished. All right. EnergyTrak control system. Really, this is what we're talking about when we say EnergyTrak. This is the gateway, the cloud, and the user interface. So really, the gateway is special because this is Briggs owned IP. So we're storing the data here in the US in the cloud. We're using the owner's router, existing internet router, and connecting an Ethernet cable to the gateway, connecting the gateway physically to the inverter and to one of the batteries in the bank. And we're going to power this gateway with battery power. So as soon as we launch, we will have fleet management of customer sites, site level monitoring and notifications. This is automatic push notifications. Business level account management, streamlined commissioning, remote reconfiguration of the units. So if you forget to change a setting or two, over-the-air firmware updates, and Wi-Fi and Ethernet connectivity. So you don't have to hardwire the unit, but we really do recommend it. So here's one point to mention. At launch, this is currently only on Android and iOS apps. It is optimized for phones and available for tablets as well, but this is not going to be available on the web. So this may be a downside for you. It's also a downside for us because at the current moment, I would not be able to access your system and remotely troubleshoot it without your login. So we can definitely get around that. Note that that's a feature that's coming very soon after launch. As far as wiring the units together, definitely want to talk about battery wiring here. We had brushed over that, but want to get into more detail. This is one way you can see each battery has an individual positive and negative run. And in here, there's going to be a combiner. Another way you can do this, if you've got 4 batteries or less, you can do a daisy chain. This means from one battery negative to the other battery negative, and so on and so forth. And then one home run from opposite ends of the bank to the inverter. This allows for minimal wiring. If you've got more than 4 batteries or more than 2 inverters, unfortunately, you're going to have to add a DC combiner. There's no way around adding some sort of bus bar or combiner system if you've got more than 4 batteries. So you can still group them with a daisy chain, but you will need a combiner. For the communications wiring, again, notice that each battery in the bank is daisy chain connected. One battery in the bank connects to the inverter, one battery in the bank connects to the gateway, and the inverter also connects directly to the gateway itself. These are all Cat 5 or greater. Lastly, I want to touch on our competitive advantages as opposed to what else is in the market today. We are the most flexible and scalable when it comes to sizing in terms of kilowatt hour capacity and kilowatt output of the system. We're of course using LFP chemistry. I think it's time that everyone get on board with LFP. It seems overdue to me. And we're offering, aside from Sonnen EcoLinks, the longest expected cycle life with really no constraints between our warranty and our spec sheets. So that's one thing to note here. Many of our competitors, when you dig into their warranties, you'll find that even though they may list you can use the product up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, anytime you operate it over 86 degrees Fahrenheit for a certain amount of time, blah, 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 you'll void your warranty. So we really match our spec sheets exactly to our warranty. You aren't required to have monitoring constantly on the system to keep your warranty intact. You really don't even need more monitoring at all if you don't want it. If you have a customer who is just opposed to sharing their data and opposed to having Wi-Fi on their property, then you don't need monitoring at all to uphold the product warranty, as opposed to several competitors that will void your warranty the minute you disconnect from the internet. Now, the last thing today I want to touch on, this isn't necessarily a product thing, but this is a training thing. So our Power Academy is really where we're going to be putting a lot of effort into our training. We've got several courses uploaded here. First off, if you want to access the site, you can. You don't need to be an installer. You don't need to be a distributor. You can be a homeowner or any interested person, and you can go here to take our trainings. You can either go through the link, through texting, or through the powerportal.com. We are delivering in-person courses that you can be notified of through the Power Academy, live virtual courses similar to what we're doing right now, and self-paced recordings. So where I really find the most value is where I think you're going to love the self-paced recordings. You can log in. Again, anybody can log in and sign up to do this. And what I mean by self-paced recordings is you'll enroll in what we refer to as a training track. This track is going to contain multiple little courses. So if you're in the fundamentals of SimpliPhi battery and energy storage systems, you're going to have an hour and 50 minutes of courses, and you're going to take each one of these courses. And within those courses, there are even smaller, broken up chunks. So this 30-minute course, you're going to take probably 6 courses that are about 5 minutes each. And then after each little course, you will take a small quiz to kind of retain that knowledge. This really breaks it up into bite-sized chunks, tracks your progress, and even allows us to send you certificates to say you've completed these courses, if that's something needed by an employer, etc. Definitely be sure to check out the Power Academy. If you're getting ready to install these systems, I'm just going to go back and point out you could definitely take the SimpliPhi ESS course. Again, it's only 30 minutes, and this is really going to give you all the knowledge that you need to use this new system. I know you've learned a lot about it today, but I mean, during these courses, you're going to get specific installation techniques, and it's going to be very helpful. So with that said, that's all I had for you today. I'm going to jump into answering some questions here. A good question, hopefully I answered, is the inverter RSD ready? So yes, it does have the AP Smart transmitter built in for rapid shutdown. So you will need to use AP Smart devices for your panels. Is the inverter made by us? Unfortunately, the inverter is not made in Oxnard. I work in Sonoma County. Is this system readily available now at, say, CED Green Tech? The system is not available right this instant. It will be available at your local CED branches in either the end of June or beginning of August. So it is available for order now, but it's shipping, in just a few weeks. Can this unit be controlled not to export? Yes, we can definitely program this unit for 0 export. You can also program it for selling the grid, for time of use, peak power shaving, not peak shower paving. You can do peak power shaving with this unit in addition to time of use. Are your UL certifications also UL Canada? We don't have those yet, but we are working on them. The unit will be available in Canada, definitely, yes. Which generators are supported? This is a great question. So really, you can use any generator you want that has, it doesn't need to have the 2-wire start, but I would recommend that if you want to use the auto generator start feature. Your generator, if integrated directly into the inverter's gen port, will need to have a 40 amp AC output or less, because that is the maximum input. However, if your generator is too large for that, you can also just use an external transfer switch to switch between the ESS system and the generator to power a house. So there's a lot of options there. Can the generator be used on top of / in addition to the batteries? How is this managed? Yeah, the generator can definitely be used at the same time as the batteries. So if you've got that generator going into the gen input on the inverter, you can use the generator to charge the batteries while you're powering a load. You can use the generator to power a load, etc. I mean, you can use solar, gen, and grid all at the same time if that's what you need to power the load. It's going to be able to take in all these inputs together. Will putting the circuit breaker to off on a single battery in the chain serve as a disconnecting means for the whole group? That's a great question, and the answer is no. You definitely need to disconnect each battery individually with their own circuit breaker to turn them off. Another good way to do this is to add an additional DC disconnect for the system if you have a need for that. Standby power for the inverter, that is a great question. I actually don't know the standby consumption, so off the top of my head, but I know we do have that spec handy, so shoot me an email My email is training@simpliphipower.com, as you can see on the screen, and I'll gladly look into that for you. What should we know about AC coupling? Well, what do you want to know? Minimum charging temp for the batteries is the same for SimpliPhi as well as the 4.9. So it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit is the minimum charging temperature for each. But you really won't have to worry about that, as the inverter will automatically curb charging and even disable charging entirely as it gets to temperatures that are cold. I don't have pricing on this unit right now because it depends where you purchase this. But if you email our sales team, sales@simpliphipower.com, then they can get you a quote. Well, sorry, they'll connect you with a distributor who will give you a quote. Yes, the inverter can be programmed for, power exporting or no power exporting. So you can program it either way to sell or not to sell. Bunch of great questions here, guys. Keep them coming. Do you anticipate any supply chain issues? Could we offer this system to a potential customer with what kind of turnaround? This is a great question. Really, what we're trying to do by integrating all these different parts and pieces into the unit is ensuring that you don't have supply chain issues with components that are external. So we do not see supply chain issues with our products. What we expect is that there may be supply chain issues with things like DC combiners, things like rapid shutdown transmitters, etc. Things that are external to the unit are what we would anticipate you might run into the supply chain issues with, which is why we have put everything into one bundled package. Every attendee, by the way, will be sent a recording of this training automatically, so just hang tight. That should come within 48 hours or less. For inverter stacks, do you have the simple wiring schematics available? Hang tight on that. The manual will contain 3-line diagrams, and that'll be available shortly. Someone's asked me to scroll back to the links for Power Academy trainings. Let's do that. So you can go here. This is what I'd recommend is the direct URL in the upper left. Got a question here about generator starts. If your customer maybe has an existing generator, but they don't have a 2-wire start capability on that generator, you can still use that gen and you'll just have to manually start it. Yes, so somebody will have to physically go out and turn that generator on if it doesn't have a 2-wire start. The efficiency of the inverter is 96%. Do we have frequency shifting for AC coupling? We definitely have frequency shifting, at least for on and off capabilities. I'm not able to, I don't know off the top of my head if we have frequency shifting capability that can reduce power production instead of just turning it off. So I will gladly look into that one. Please email me and I'll get back to you on that. The list of distributors that can be found on our website. So look on our website for our where to buy map, but really, I mean, just email us and we'll get you in touch with our distributors. So email us at sales@SimpliPhi Power and we'll get you in touch with our distributors. Power export limit, I mean, it's a 6 kilowatt inverter, so you can export 6 kilowatts. We don't have a DC combiner box right now, but we're working to create one, so hopefully we will have one soon. I'll say that again. We do have a DC combiner box. It's the Boss 6 combiner. So if you've seen our Boss 6 cabinet, it's quite a large unit, steel case. It holds up to 6 batteries for outdoor use. That is available for combining batteries outside from us, but that is not wall mountable. So what we're working on right now is a much smaller wall mountable combiner. Yes, you can limit the power export for sure. So if you've got like 10 inverters, but you only want to output 10 kilowatts to the grid, you can definitely limit that power export. Is tech support available while we are installing the unit? Yes, of course. We have really good tech support. We definitely support our customers. We answer the phone immediately from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Can we promote this system and offer installations with support from your marketing network? In other words, do you support installers through leads or references? Yeah, if you're interested in our leads and customers who want our units, then what you're going to want to do is apply to be a certified installer. So we've got a link on our website, but again, just email me at training@simpliphipower.com and I'll gladly point out to you, Elliot, how you can become part of our team, essentially, a certified installer of our product. How many batteries are in the 4.9 kilowatt box? That's a good question. 4.9 kilowatts worth. So there are it's one battery in that box. All right, that looks like all the questions I see. Great questions, everybody, today. Hopefully I was able to answer the question well. Got a question about warranties here. Yes, we do. We do replace units under warranty if they fail for a manufacturing defect. Our warranty is pretty clear about what we cover and what we don't. The only things we don't cover really are installer errors and things like lightning. So yeah, if it's a manufacturing defect, we will gladly cover replacing or repairing the unit. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for joining today. And again, email us with any questions at training@simpliphipower.com or sales@simpliphipower.com. And we will gladly answer any questions we weren't able to today, route you to a distributor, get you set up as an installation, as a qualified installer group, etc. So thanks for coming and expect to see the recording soon. See you next time.